Stone Cold, what's up, my man?
How we doing, brother?
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
Well, what in the fucking world is going on, period, right now? Shit is getting crazy, brother. So, how are you doing, man? How you been?
Man, I'm good. I'm out at my place here in Nevada, just kind of kicking it in
I was
the
going
middle
to
of
say,
nowhere.
that's the spot to be right now, and probably for the last year or so, you've probably just been posted up chilling.
Man, I've been riding my buggies a lot, and I'm looking forward to. I've been talking about this show for a while, and talking about it again next Monday on the season premiere. So I'm excited about it. After all the stuff that the world has been through in 2020, and then we got greenlit for season 2, and then right when we were going to get everybody booked and start, we got stopped, and it changed everything. So finally, we were able to start and operate in a safe fashion and get the goddamn show in the can. So I'm excited I got a chance to work in 2020, get a paycheck, and have a ton of fun with all my guests, and it finally gets to come out on TV. So I'm in a happy place there, but hey, the world's kind of messed up, but we don't need to talk about that.
No, not, out there on the ranch, chopping it up with Stone Cold is, and you speak of the guests, I feel like season 1, we spoke before you launched it, and it was great, but season 2, I feel like it's on a whole other level. Some of the names that you've gotten and it just seems like the status is really taken off, and you can tell.
It's really cool, and I love all the guests on my season 1 because all they had to look at was a pilot that we shot a couple years back, and we didn't know really what the show was. So now, if maybe someone didn't hear of me or didn't watch my career or whatever, they can say, you can give them a season's worth of shows, and you can give them the numbers that correlate with it, because we kicked ass in the ratings. Say, here's the show, here's what it is, and they can actually know what they're getting themselves into, and they know that they're going to get themselves into a good time. We're going to do great things. We're going to talk about their accomplishments or what they've, journey to get to where they're at or where they came from, and have a good time. And I tell each guest before we start up, I say, hey, man, if we don't have a ton of fun doing this, we're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. So I think with the body of work, you can go, bigger.
Yeah. Did Bert Kreischer even know you were filming? Or was he just
Bert Kreischer lives?
Dude, we're standing around at a swimming pool. Yeah, that's part of on a trailer. We're standing in a swimming pool, and that guy, he says so much stuff that didn't make camera, and we're drinking beer and eating a steak, and I'm spitting out half the beer, and he's making me laugh so goddamn much. He was an absolute riot, and I always thought he was funny to begin with, but when you hang out with him, it's like next level.
Right.
That guy's dropping bombs the whole day.
Now, he says he has the Mickey Mantle gene. I don't know if he brings this up on the show, but he says he has the Mickey Mantle gene, which means he's great at everything. How did he do on the ranch?
Oh, he did great.
Yeah,
he did great.
He can do it all. It's weird. He picks up a bat, he can swing it. He shoots a basket, he can do it. He's strong, he can drink, he can party. He's weird. He can do it all.
He's the machine.
Yep, it really is. And you know what? On top of it, he's got the persona and the personality and the gift of gab to boot. So when the stories get going with Bert, I would imagine, and I'd imagine that's much like yourself. You've been all over the place. You've been all over the world. You've had an interesting life. When the stories start flowing, that's when the real fun starts.
Yeah, it's all the stories, and obviously being a touring comedian, he's had so much practice at it, and he's done it so many times. And man, when you can start telling a story, but when you've told it for so long, you can add different layers to it, and it always stays consistent. That's when you really become a fascinating or funny storyteller. Mm-hmm. And he's out of 1 out of 10 storytelling, I'll give him a 9.9.
Yeah. When you mentioned that these guests now have they can look at season 1 and they have some work to go off of, but I would imagine, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, you could come to me with fucking nothing, Steve. I don't need a pilot. I don't need ratings. If you said, we're just going to go to my ranch and do some shit with Stone Cold, I feel like a lot of people would just be like, yes, I'm in. I want to do it. How many of your fans, how many of your guests seemed like eager to just, live the Stone Cold experience?
Man, most of them were really cool.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's because they have seen season 1. But they just, like I said, we're out there to have a good time and to shine a light on them, and also help them promote whatever they've got going. And they're giving you anywhere from 6 to 10 hours of their life, and so you want to make it a good time. But yeah, if everybody was like you, I mean, hell, I could get anybody in the world on the show.
Well, I mean,
I think you could. Earlier in this, you said like maybe who they didn't follow my career, or they haven't heard of me, or whatever.
They know.
Stone Cold, you're talking about 3 people maybe in the world who just like don't know exactly what you're about.
I know. I don't look at myself like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
maybe the other people do, but I don't. So
Well, I think that's what makes you you. I feel like that's why you're able to have kind of this second part of your career where you're still down to earth and pretty self-deprecating. I mean, yeah, Steve, you're a pretty cool fucking cat. You're pretty legendary, man. I mean, most people are gonna know your story.
I think you guys are going to be upfront enough with me. If I ever do turn into a blowhard, you'll be the first to
tell you.
Yeah.
No, I won't. I will be terrified to tell you.
You're very wrong.
Maybe over Zoom. Maybe you know what else? As we're wrapping up, I'll be like, "Hey, Steve, you're a blowhard." I'll end it. But do you feel that at all? Like, I think that there's kind of 2 different parts of you in the sense of like. One is the way you look and the way and the wrestling background and just being like a badass motherfucker. But this other side of you is like you're very interested in other people. You want to talk. You want to learn. You want to do. It almost seems. And maybe it's because Stone Cold is a character, but I would never have imagined that you would have this second act of being into like podcasting and the internet. And I would imagine you have just go out to the ranch and do ranch stuff. But it seems like there's this other side of you that's really interested in, media and a brand and all that. Do you feel like there's 2 different parts of Steve Austin?
Man, I guess it's 2 different parts. It's the same guy. Now, hell, I'd love to be Stone Cold 24/7. We ought to get paid to do it.
Yeah.
But, I don't really facilitate a great conversation being Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What?
I'm always getting
bottom
line and wanting everybody. And, I can be, very intense.
Yeah.
But, as Steve Austin, the guy where Stone Cold comes from, I am curious. I love people. I love to be away from people as well.
Yeah.
But I like hearing stories, and like, man, when you're hanging out with this list of guests that I have, and I've seen everything that they've done, it's just to get a chance to pick their brain and do some things with them is really cool to me. And I would have never figured, because when I got out of business pro wrestling and I had to pull the plug on myself because of just some neck problems and stuff like that. But it took me a long time to, turn back into a civilian. It was hard. That was the hardest thing in the world for me. I didn't have an exit strategy. When I got into business, I only had one plan: to be a pro wrestler. There was no plan B. So when I got, injured and needed to get retired, I didn't have an exit strategy to go to the next phase, because I wasn't thinking that. And so to think that, I'd start podcasting, people would realize, hey, the dude actually has a sense of humor. He's not mad all the time. He's not drunk all the time. He's not saying what all the time.
Yeah.
He's, he can actually, facilitate a conversation and do a few things. Yeah, it was a growing process. And, when I first went out to LA, half times I'd go into meetings for stuff. This is when I first went out to LA 16 years ago. Hell, they thought, that I was going to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the podcast kind of helped me break down some of those walls. And they're like, you know what, the dude, he's kind of down to earth, and he can be funny, and he'll ask some good questions every now and then. It's not always about me. So it's fun to be able to go through that process. And I'm glad people have accepted me as that guy, because if there's one thing that I am, I'm 100% authentic, and I ain't never faking shit.
Have you noticed a drastic change in your, not drastic, but a change at all in your fan base? Because like my girlfriend is obsessed with your show. She loves the show. She's like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done to her, is talking to you. And she's a young girl who was not necessarily a Stone Cold Steve Austin fan. She's a Steve Austin fan. She loves straight up Steve Austin. Have you noticed a lot of that like demographic change?
Man, that's a great compliment. And I'll still get, and I'm happy for it, because of the network, because of the video games. man, dude came up to me. We were talking. He goes, man, my son is your biggest fan. So I'm figuring the kid's got to be 20-something, right? And I said, how old is he? He goes, he's 5. I'm like calling bullshit. I'm like, how's it? I retired in 03, dude. And he goes, no, through the network and through the video games. I don't know what it is, but now that I've been out of the ring for so long, it's kind of like, well, I'll just say
it,
because a lot of people around. It's just people. There's a lot of people who do remember me just for this show, and I love that because I can be stone cold. Well, I can't be him all day long because I'm not him anymore. But I can't live on that forever. It'll always be a part of me, and I gotta do what I'm doing now, and I'm being me. So the fact that I can create a fan base by being me, hanging out with a guest, that's very cool to me, and means I've succeeded at the next level.
I wouldn't ever go as far to say it's a blessing in disguise, because I'm sure it was a lot of pain and a lot of anguish and hard to leave the ring with the injury. But it's an industry where I feel like people hold on for so long. You got guys who are wrestling into their 60s. They just, a Goldberg coming back, and I feel like, sometimes the fans would rather you move on, and it probably sucked in the time because you probably felt like it was cut short and pain and all that. But I think in a weird way, it kind of jump started you to get to the second act, and in the long run might end up being better for at least the career aspect.
Maybe it kept me from getting beat up anymore. But, I wasted 3 or 4 years, after that, just fucking off. Mm-hmm. And, when I moved into L.A., I messed around in San Antonio for a while, just kill some time, doing some things to kill time. And I said, hey, man, you better get your ass out to L.A. because I never had any plans on being an actor or nothing like that. But I just knew that after finally getting over being out of the business, I need to get to LA because I didn't want to go back to driving that forklift. And I called DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, up, and he goes, shit, bro, come in and rent a room for me. I got a 2-bedroom condo. And I said, hell yeah, I'm in. And so when I went out to Dallas, I wasted another year in LA just hanging out and drinking. So,
doing yoga?
This is the Steve Austin yoga. Up, down, up, down.
I was there. I would be walking downstairs to make my breakfast, and Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, would be in his office already working on yoga for regular guys way back in the day, right? And that was DDP yoga. And I just shake my head as I went there to go get some coffee. I'm thinking, this motherfucker, he ain't gonna make no money in yoga. Guys don't give a shit about it. And now look at him now.
Yep.
He's helped out probably hundreds of thousands of people, high profile athletes. It's amazing. But I was there and I was thinking, man, the dude's putting all his money in this. They always say, don't put your money in and then use other people's money. I went in.
Did you ever get him a coffee when you were pouring yourself one?
I might have.
Okay, well, now you're an assistant.
There you go.
You're an assistant. You were there at the ground floor. You deserve equity, brother.
Ground floor. Yeah. I'm calling him right after I get talking to you guys.
One of the things that I think a lot of athletes struggle with after their career, or at least they say, is that it's not even so much the game, it's the locker room they miss. Is a wrestling locker room like that too? Is there like the brotherhood, or do you guys kind of go your own separate ways afterwards?
No, 100%. You do go your separate ways because I only stay in contact with a few people. But when we see each other at the reunions, it's just like time never passed and we're all back on the same page. But yeah, man, you just miss running up down the road because you got to look, to be on a professional sports team, that's or any kind of team that's kind of doing something unique or high level, it's different. Pro wrestling is different in and of itself. And to be at the top and the best company in the world, you're traveling around with like-minded people, and then it's that circle. And you might not all get along, but you're on the same team. And if somebody from the outside's fucking with somebody from the inside, everybody's got each other's back. So there is a brotherhood, and there's competition, and there's animosity, and there's jealousy, and there's everything that goes with it. But the biggest thing is we're all in this together, and it is a brotherhood, to answer your question. And it is about the locker room. It is about the arenas, hanging around, whether it's dipping, chewing, drinking coffee to kill time, wait for the crowd to get in there to kick it off or start a TV taping. Yeah, it's a lot about that.
How does it work? You mentioned, you just said that there is some animosity at times and you don't always get along, but I feel like when you're in the ring with someone, there's got to be a level of trust and some sort of cooperation that goes on, or someone's going to get fucking hurt. Had you ever encountered like, I don't like this guy, we're not on the same page personally, but now he and I have got to, put on a show and fight, and how hard can that be?
No, I've never been that place in my career. By animosity, I mean, like, if you're on the card or you're traveling, and then someone that you think is beneath you or someone else is getting a major push, and you're kind of just like, that can be, to create a little animosity or a little, really?
Yeah.
So there's that. And the closest thing I can think of to when, the situation like you were talking about, two guys that didn't really care for each other, like Brett and Sean. I remember one time, I think they went to the ring and everybody's saying, oh man, it's going to be a shoot. It's going to be badass. It wasn't, because the business is a work, and those guys were, that was just like on a one night thing. Those guys did that Iron Man match, worked for 60 minutes. Anytime you put those two guys in the ring, they lit it up, and it was a 5-star classic. So yeah, being like that don't work in the ring. Now, when a guy, gives you a potato and, it's the wrong potato or too many potatoes, and you give them a live one back, but then you get back on the same page and everything's cool.
Well, I feel like recently there was Behind the Mat was a documentary, maybe not so recently, but in recent years, the wrestling fans have been talking about the time that The Rock and Mankind were going at it. And there was kind of this, the thought that maybe The Rock had taken it a little too far, and Mankind, it went a little too extreme with the chair shots. How does that kind of work, where it's like, yeah, it's scripted, but also there's a little bit of improvising, and if one guy's taking it too far or one guy's too extreme or something along those lines, like, how does that play out before, during, and after, where it's like, what was that about?
I think on that occasion you're talking about with the chairs with the handcuffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was brutal. That was hard to watch. And I think I was working that night or getting ready for something. I don't remember if I was watching it that night or just remember watching it after. But that was kind of like one of those deals where, as one of the boys, you're like, man, this is a little much. But then on the other hand, they're thinking, hey man, we're really trying to push the envelope, and so I can respect what they're doing, but also on the other hand, I'm like, what were you doing?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a two-way street,
right?
So I can look at it from both sides of the spectrum. I get it, but also that's a little too much. Oh, case in point, but not to the violence of that, was when Pillman pulled out the gun when I broke into his house.
Yeah.
He was like, what are you doing? So, hey, but we're trying to entertain you. Yeah, but there was a gunshot on TV or whatever. And I'm breaking into his house with a bat. A lot of people thought that was over the edge. I thought it was just right.
I mean, as a fan, that was amazing. And even, I hate to say it because it probably contributes to it, but that match with The Rock and Mick Foley was incredible. But then you see the aftermath, his daughters are crying, and you see him getting stitched up afterwards, and it's like, oh my God, I feel like almost guilty being a fan liking that, but.
Well, like I said, man, because I love chair shots and stuff like that, and they're a thing, and with all the CTE stuff or whatever. But that was the hardest part about that, was watching, I think his daughter, maybe Dewey was as well, but
yeah,
just watching them just selling and crying, and they didn't know what was up. They were just watched Daddy wrestle, and it was kind of a little bit more than that.
Back to the show, you mentioned everybody, storytelling is the crux of it all. And I would imagine when people come on to your show and they're on the ranch and they're in front of Steve Austin, they're bringing their best stories. If the tables were turned, if you were a guest on a show like this and you felt like you really needed to bring the heat with some of your stories and tales from your life or maybe upbringing, what would you tell? What would be your go-to story? Like, I got to wow the crowd right now.
No, I mean, well, they'd have to ask me, but I'm an open book. Mm-hmm. And if you want a story, I really don't have anything to hide at this point in my life. And, I've done pretty good and I've done pretty bad. You want to talk about it, just ask it. Let's go.
I like that. There's not a single thing you would hide. There's nothing that you, could I ever ask you a question and you would be like, interview over, we're done.
But then, it's hard because the show is a fast moving show. It's a half-hour show, which means that's 22 minutes of content. And so, you got to tell a long story short, or, kind of keep things moving. So, there's an art to it. And, it's almost like being on a talk show for three different segments, right? Or 3 or 4 different segments. So you got to get the beats in and don't, tell some stories, but tell them quick.
How long is filming for it?
Like to film an episode? Or
yeah,
what?
to film an episode.
Okay, like the day before, we'll go through all the beats. Camera's going to know their angles. We know what we're doing, but we don't have the guests there. So, I'll have someone riding with me, and anything I might be driving a new contraption, whether it's on land or water. I've got to learn to drive that safely because I've got one of the biggest superstars on planet Earth with me.
Right.
And I cannot harm them. And we're going to go through some adrenaline. So there's that. And I got my producer riding shotgun, and she's a blast, and she's amazing. So we're doing that. And then when a guest shows up, from when they get there after makeup and going through everything, it can take anywhere from 6 to 8 or better hours. Because sometimes you have multiple locations, different setups, different rigs. Everybody's got to tear down the sets, especially if we got to move. Dude, it is a work in progress. It's a half-hour show. It takes all day to film. And by the time I'm done filming, 2 days for an episode, and, I'm ready for a beer.
Have you kept up at all in the world of boxing and UFC with what's going on with Mayweather and McGregor and these the Jake and Logan Paul kids from the internet?
I have not.
Okay, so there's 2 guys, Logan and Jake Paul, who are Cleveland kids who came up on YouTube, massive YouTube stars. They also grew up like very good high school wrestlers and have since trained to be boxers as well and have done some amateur boxing, but on a pretty big scale because they're a big draw. They do pay-per-views. They can sell out arenas. And the one kid, Logan, has challenged Floyd Mayweather to a fight, and he is going to do it in February. The other brother, Jake, is in the process of trying to call out Conor McGregor and box him as well. I know there's been some kind of CM Punk once did a little UFC. There was like some crossover in those worlds. But as far as in the world of combat sports, could you imagine, these kids are in shape. They do know how to throw hands a little bit, but they're now stepping in the ring with some world-class fighters. Without knowing too much about the situation, if you could give your prediction on how that's going to go.
Man, it's going to be kind of hard to hit Floyd because he's so elusive. If you're not an elite striker, you're probably not going to touch him. And with respect, I'd say that he's not known as being a power puncher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then again, I don't know what kind of chin they have because it's kind of a world that I don't really know about. But anyway, it's going to be hard to hit. As far as the other one goes, Conor McGregor's heavy-handed, in my opinion. I think he's very heavy-handed. God dang, the way he uses distance and closes distance.
Not interested in getting in the ring with either of those guys?
No, I don't want no part of either one of them. Because by the time I miss Floyd with a big-ass right hook, he's going to hit me like 20 times. Now, that ain't going to be fun.
Let me ask you this, because obviously it's a little bit different with wrestling because, obviously there's a scripted element to it. But this kid, Jake, when he was calling out Conor McGregor, and he's trying to bait him, and he's trying to sell pay-per-views, and so there's a lot of shit talking in the fight promoting world. But this kid immediately started talking about his wife, said that she's ugly, said that she's a 4 out of 10. He's really like personal shots at him and his family. What would happen if someone started running their mouth to Steve Austin that way?
I don't know. But just as far as trying to promote a fight, that's the worst place a person could go.
Right? I mean,
I'll leave it at that.
Right. There's some things you just can't say, right? It's like we're not even talking about putting on a show anymore. Now it's just personal.
Not down with it.
No. I don't think there'd be many people who would take it there with you anyway, brother. I know I wouldn't.
But to take it there with him, man.
No, it's crazy. All right, man. Well, listen, we appreciate the time. It sounds like things are just going absolutely fantastic with this show. I foresee a lot more seasons if you keep up, these guests that you've got and the gift of gab that you've got. So keep doing your thing, man, and we always appreciate the time.
I hope so. Maybe one of the days I can get down there and see you guys again in person, and I appreciate you helping push the show. It's a different part, another step down the road for me. And I'm having a blast doing the show, and the show is just designed to entertain people. We ain't trying to be rocket science. So hopefully
that is one of the
enjoy
things that it very clearly comes through. That
Yeah.
just everyone's having fun.
Right.
You can tell that in any kind of content. You can just be like, these people are doing it because they have to do it versus these people are doing it because they're having fun and enjoying it with each other. And that comes through a lot in the show.
Well, I appreciate it. That's the biggest compliment I could get because
That's about the host. The host is the one who makes that come through. So well done by you.
I'm trying, brother. I'm trying.
You're succeeding. It's January 11th on USA at 11 p.m. So go check it out. And thanks always for the time.
Thank you so much, Stone Cold.
Thanks, guys. Catch you later.
Have a good one. I'm going to hit you with a little YouTube sabermetrics, okay? Only 15% of people who watch the videos on the KFC Radio channel are actually subscribed. That means
you fucking lurkers. I'm
right?
tired. Yeah,
free
I'm tired of
85% freeloaders.
Retweet, like, fucking heart on Instagram.
Rate, review, subscribe.
If you enjoy content, double tap it.
Literally,
double tap to subscribe.
Just click. It doesn't. I think you only have to click it once, not even double.
Well, okay,
just one click.
But I'm not a mathematician. Just a one click works.
Because I don't want. If you double click, you might subscribe and then unsubscribe.
Oh, true.
So just one click.
3 clicks.
3 clicks to subscribe, because otherwise, I mean, it literally doesn't affect you at all, and it will basically make our careers so much better.
Oh,
Please
so much better.
Do it.
Oh, you'll get us so good.
Please.
You'll get us going
Come on.
85% of you.
Don't be poor.
Triple time. The thing. The subscribe thing.
Smash that button, as they say.